Port Rory in Europe's Ryder Cup team in September with Ryanair's low fares to Rome.
Dry in many areas early tonight with clear spells and a few lingering showers. Cloud will build overnight with patchy drizzle developing in parts of Connacht and Ulster. Lows of 9 to 12 degrees. Now you're up to date on News Talk.
The Newsround on Off the Ball. This is News Talk.
Welcome along to Thursday night's Off the Ball on what has been already an historic day for Irish sport, with the Republic of Ireland competing in their first ever match at a World Cup finals. Unfortunately, the results did not go their way, as you will have heard on the news there. A 1-0 loss to Australia at Stadium Australia in Sydney, and we will reflect on that game a little bit later on in the show with Kathleen McNamee, with Gavin Cooney, and we'll hear from the players themselves with Kyra Crusa and Lucy Quinn. Now, Ellen Keane just turned 28 in April. She's already looking at life after swimming. Retirement at 28. She joins us on tonight's show as well. And as Limerick strive to win a fourth All-Ireland title in a row, we look back on a time when such aspirations were very fanciful indeed. We'll talk the 2010 strike with Andrew O'Shaughnessy, Niall Moran and Paul Brown. And it being Thursday, we'll talk to John Giles as well. You can get in contact with us 53106 for 30 cent. Your reflections on this morning's events in Sydney and indeed at Hoylake, as well as the opening day of the Open continues this evening. Joining us in studio is Arthur O'Dea and Anne-Marie Dolan.
Hi, Rich.
Welcome, both of you. You were on your way in here this morning, so you're useless to ask about the match this morning, Arthur.
I saw bits.
You saw bits. Anne-Marie, your thoughts?
Yeah, I was impressed by it. If you had said kind of when that draw was made that Saturday morning and it was flagged as the group of death, if you had said that Ireland would only lose 1-0 to Australia in that opening game and it had been a penalty that decided the game, then you would have probably thought somebody was mad to be saying that, which kind of sees where this Irish side is at the moment, you know. And I think it has to be remembered as well, this side possibly has qualified a tournament too early, as in when they didn't qualify for the last Euros. I think most people's goal would have been the next European Championships. Now, it was obviously brilliant to qualify for the World Cup and they obviously are going there with great belief, etc., but they are possibly a little bit ahead of schedule in terms of major tournaments. But there was great positives to take out of today. We knew obviously that they'd set up quite defensively and they were impressive in that regard. And also Abby Larkin as well, I think, coming on at the age of 18, the way she held herself when she came on, there was absolutely no nerves and she brought a bit of danger going forward as well. That was brilliant to see. So it does look like going forward, this team, you know, they're not a flash in the pan, and you never know as well with Sam Kerr being out for the Canada game, it does kind of slightly throw the group that little bit more open, and if they were to get a result against Canada, you never know. But there were definitely positives massively to take out of the game, and it was brilliant as well that they didn't seem to falter to the occasion, because there had been such a long build up to this ever since they qualified, but also even before that, and then in the weeks coming up to the game, you know, with the Colombia game and the allegations against Vera Pauw, everything, and they really didn't seem to falter at the occasion, you know, they really didn't seem to let it get to them.
Yeah, it'll take a lot for a lot of people to get up at 3:30 in the morning and watch Canada and Nigeria and find out what lies ahead of us, Arthur, for the next couple of games, but certainly there's enough confidence to build upon from this morning. You're coming away going, we should have gotten a draw against the tournament host in the opening game of the tournament. You're doing something right.
Yeah, because that was definitely, even I know yesterday we had our first World Cup show with Kathleen and Sinead O'Carroll, and like, I suppose, you know, wanting to be positive, but at the same time I think they predicted 3-0, 3-1 kind of storyline. So I appreciate that, and that was before we knew the news about Sam Kerr, so that's kind of, that does temper it a bit. But I'd like, from a very, I suppose, from my outlook from the thing, it's not, I don't find it that surprising. You kind of always, I suppose, been pretty well organised and pretty well regimented, and it's kind of as they both said sort of at the time, like the problem probably would be scoring goals rather than necessarily stopping them. So it still seems, while it's extremely good and you want to have a good show yourselves, I don't know. I mean, you were in here at all hours this morning watching it. What do you think? Do you think like it's realistic that they'd win the next two?
Win the next two. I don't like. I can't say I will have seen enough of Nigeria to know that 3 points would be given against them. They could definitely hope for a result for sure. Canada is going to be again another tough game. It's how the rest of the group pans out. I think is ultimately going to be what Ireland are depending on, and that Canada-Australia game suddenly seems huge, particularly if Kerr isn't going to play for Australia, which certainly appears to be the case judging on this morning's mutterings. But I think it's unfortunate we're talking about a hard-fought 1-0 loss.
Yeah,
but I think again that's where we are. Like, they're a very hard fighting side who don't necessarily have a lot of goals in them, so this is the result that more often than not, when you come up against these types of teams that are gonna befall us. It is slightly satisfying though that it was a penalty and not like I thought. You would have heard Tony Gustafson's, the Australian manager's comments yesterday, where he's like, we have identified a weakness in the Irish defence, particularly towards the end of the half, and particularly one or two of their players. You're like, hold on, you smug get.
Yeah,
where you go? That's like that close to being. Do you remember Brendan Rodgers with his, I have 3 envelopes, and in these envelopes are the names of players that are going to let me down this season? You're like, where'd you get off, mate? No, he wasn't even prompted. He wasn't like, where do you see the tactical foibles of Ireland being? He's like, and he went on. He was like, out of nowhere, oh, by the way, they're crap towards the end of each half, and there's 1 or 2 players that are dodgy, and we're going to get them. And it took a penalty for them to overturn us. So at least there's that. As I mentioned as well, we're going to go to Limerick and look back on the dark times in Limerick hurling. Arthur, you managed to put this piece together. It is when we talk about teams being rampant and we talk about teams winning All Ireland after All Ireland after All Ireland, what does soften the cough is going back to days like 2010 when Limerick were in absolute turmoil, and the thought of winning 4 All Irelands in a bounce was a completely dreamlike state. We talked to 3 veterans of that as well on the show.
Yeah, thought of winning 1 All Ireland was fanciful. Like, let alone, like, this is, nobody plans to do what they're doing now. No. Nobody can. But I just remember that it was so, because it was like they'd gotten to the final in 07. Yeah. And there was a kind of, it wasn't that they got there on merit, but it was a strange year. I remember there was 3 games against Tipperary. Yeah. And then losing to Waterford, and then beating Waterford again when everyone expected them to lose. So that was kind of, there was a sense of
Asher, it's good enough to be there kind of thing.
Yeah, a little bit of that, but there was kind of it wasn't quite you couldn't, if you went back and said how they plotted this out, you wouldn't be able to necessarily say, well, there's a plan here with all this. And then it kind of falls apart thereafter. Like, again, back in the All Ireland semi-final in 2009, and they get hammered by Tipperary, absolutely hammered. And then,
which shouldn't happen in an All Ireland semi-final.
No, it shouldn't.
Yeah.
And it does tend to happen. It sort of happened again to Limerick in 2013. But it's just, as you're saying, and the lads will know, as they'll talk about, like, it's, I suppose it was quite in vogue at the time with like a strike, but just this notion that, like, 12 players, I think they said, were cut away, and then it was really done cack-handedly, so a load of other players start walking away. And I just remember that time, and like the lads, it was so tough, as they'll mention, really tough for the guys who had to come in and make up the squad, who were kind of either peripheral or players who'd probably had their chance. They were a little bit older, into their 20s already, and just having to come in to make up the squads and take hammerings, generally more or less beaten, certainly.
The league that year in 2010, they lost all 7 of their matches, and so for the particular hammering against Dublin in their last game, they relegated them.
And the fantastic thing really in the whole, because I remember from 2018, say, when it turns back, they got relegated that year, and I know the league kept shifting format and whatever, but they didn't get promoted again until 2018. 2018 was when they came back up, and I remember in 2018 thinking, well, that's already been a good year. They've already done that, so they've got promoted back up to Division 1A or whatever it was at the time. That's fantastic. And then obviously it proceeds to go on and win the All Ireland. Like, it just keeps building and building and building. But it does show like how long they were kind of on the other end of it. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy.
Yeah, we'll talk in detail about that a little bit after 8 o'clock. We're going to be speaking to Andrew O'Shaughnessy, Niall Moran and Paul Brown about that. As I mentioned, John Giles on the way, Ellen Keane as well, 28 years of age and contemplating retirement. Would you believe? We start, Anne-Marie, the Newsround, with events in Sydney this morning.
Yeah, the Republic of Ireland suffered a narrow 1-0 defeat to Australia in their first ever FIFA Women's World Cup game today. Matilda's captain Steph Catley scored the winner from the penalty spot in Sydney. That was after a foul by Marissa Shiva. Australia are therefore top of Group B, while Canada and Nigeria meet in the morning. Ireland's Lucy Quinn felt they could have gotten more out of the game, but also recognised the gravity of the occasion.
At the minute, it's a weird mixture. I'm really disappointed because obviously that was a great end to the game and we really could have stolen something there. And then on the other side of things, yeah, I'm super proud, super happy. My family are here and that's what I've wanted to do since I was 6 years old, and to do it in this shirt is just, I'm very lucky, and it's something that I'll have with me now for the rest of my life. Honestly, it was unbelievable. I knew that they'd be there in numbers, but yeah, we could hear them, and when you look at the crowd, you think, how is that possible? They're singing, they're cheering, you know, they're really driving us energy wise, and yeah, it's a special moment to look out into the crowd and see all the green and see the flag, and yeah, they were loud all the game through.
There you go, that's Lucy Quinn speaking after the 1-0 defeat.
Yeah, and the game was 0-0 at half-time. Speaking to Kathleen McNamee after the game, Ciara Carusa explained what was said by manager Vera Pauw in the dressing room.
Message from Vera, yeah, it was that we keep our heads, and the next 5 minutes coming out in that half are crucial for us. Again, read the momentum of the game, catch the moments in which that we have it, and when we don't, and continue to do what we do well. But I think the biggest thing was that she was basically like, there's going to be one moment that dictates this game back and forth, and truly it was, and it's really unfortunate that was the moment that did. But again, that's football for you.
And what were you saying to each other after the penalty was given away? And I mean, there was nothing no one could do with that penalty. It was incredibly well taken. But what was the message within the team?
I'd say that the message within the team was push, step up. I think after that that was kind of a catalyst for us to say, you know what, we're going to change this a bit, we're going to push up a bit more, we're going to put them under the back foot, and we're going to make them have to play out when they don't really want to play out. So I think that if anything, it was a catalyst for us to get behind one another and say that I believe that you can do this, and I believe that I can do this.
Ciara Carusa there. We'll hear more from her and Lucy Quinn in the next hour of the show. 53106 for 30 cent. Want to get in contact tonight? Somebody asks, was the penalty not a lack of discipline? Penalties sadly more often than not tend to be so, yes. Also, we've had Jack on YouTube saying, folks, should Amber Barrett not have been brought on? Has an eye for goal based on recent events. Very positive result nonetheless. Thank you for that, Jack. Yeah,
she was warming up at one point.
She was. I think Kathleen pointed that out as well when we speak to her later on, that she was warming up, and at the point where you thought she was going to be brought on, it was Izzy Atkinson who came on, which I don't know, maybe Vera knows more than we do, but we'll talk more in depth, as I mentioned, with Kathleen McNamee on that, and also with Gav Cooney from the 42.ie, and we'll hear further thoughts from the two players as well. Stephen on YouTube as well, thank you for your message, who says, I'm on the bus on the way home, number 3 bus, 2 packs of Quavers, Glasgow. It's that kind of input that keeps us going. What was the other results this morning, Anne-Marie?
Co-hosts New Zealand caused a massive upset in the tournament's opening game. Hannah Wilkinson's goal saw them beat Norway 1-0 in Auckland. That's their first ever World Cup win in 16 attempts. Group A opponents Switzerland and the Philippines meet tomorrow, and tomorrow's other game is the clash of Spain and Costa Rica in Group C.
Yeah, 3:30 start for Canada and Nigeria in our group as well, which is it's going to be a tough ask, but there are those of us amongst us. I know one or two out in the office are certainly going to be up at that hour to watch it ahead of OTB AM in the morning. The two lads, Nathan and Joe, are in a Telegram group at the moment, absolutely loving life, chatting backwards and forwards, talking about the first round of the Open.
Rory McIlroy is 1 over par through 14 holes of his opening round at the Open Championship at Hoylake. Waterford's Seamus Power, meanwhile, is a level par. He's best of the Irish. That's after an opening round of 71. 2019 champion Shane Lowry is 1 over par after today, as is Meath amateur Alex Maguire. Darren Clark then is 2 over, with Padraig Harrington back on 3 over. There is currently a 3-way tie tie for the lead on 5 under par.
Yeah, one of those, the South African amateur, Christo Lamprecht. Great name. Big night for Irish sides in European football. We know Shamrock Rovers are going to have to play Ferencváros in the second qualifying round next week. Anne-Marie, more sides looking to join them in that round tonight?
Hopefully so. 3 Irish sides are in Europa Conference League qualifying action later on. Dundalk resume level at 0-0 with Bruno's Magpies. That's ahead of their second leg at Oriel Park. Derry City are also at home and also scoreless. That's with Tourcheven, and St. Pat's must overturn a 2-1 first leg deficit at home to Dudelange of Luxembourg. All of those games kick off at 7:45.
We're going to be talking transfers in depth with John Giles very shortly indeed. One of those ones we touch upon was one that has been flagged for a while. It looked as if for a while he was off to Saudi Arabia, but he's gone to the equally more glamorous
Wolves. Matt Doherty has rejoined the club on a free transfer as part of a 3-year deal. The Republic of Ireland international played more than 300 games for the club in his first spell before moving to Tottenham in 2020. The 31-year-old went to Atletico Madrid in January of this year for a brief spell that unfortunately didn't work out. So Matt Doherty back at Molineux.
Yeah, he's a Republic of Ireland international playing in the Premier League, Arthur. I don't think we can give out about that. He will look at this as, well, some people might look at this as a backward step, but this suits him to a T, you would imagine.
Oh yeah, I think it's not a bad outcome at all.
Yeah,
I mean, the Spurs didn't go well, Atletico Madrid didn't really go well. This is back, as you're saying, kind of, it's an environment he'll be comfortable in, presumably, somewhat anyway.
Yeah.
With a chance to kick on in a team that's kind of a great manager, and like it's a no-brainer. It's a fantastic outcome. It's much better than the alternative, I suppose, of going to Saudi Arabia or wherever and just kind of packing
He's
it in.
He's possibly a bit relieved that Wolves are willing to take him back. When you think about where it could have gone.
Yeah, well, you look at his, he's 31.
His last 2 spells have not been positive.
Gone well at all. Getting a Premier League move at all would be fantastic for Doherty. It's just a funny one when you just see Saudi Arabia. He's obviously got the Jorge Mendes links, as do Wolves, to be fair. But when he's getting linked with Saudi Arabia and possibly earning a couple of 100,000 tax free a week, suddenly you land in the West Midlands. I hope his family are okay with the decision. They're not like, Matt,
at least his life still has a point, you know. It's like there's that's a sort of professional impetus to get up in the morning, like, you know.
Like, apart from the limbo that is Saudi Arabia for a bunch of footballers from here on in,
it's just a waste of time.
You won't, like, is there a point where, like, at what point do we start covering it with any degree of seriousness?
I was just wondering that recently. It won't be long before
do you think
a British broadcaster at least gets highlights. That's 100%. On the way.
Viaplay will probably do it.
We're going to start seeing gear as well in shops and on kids.
Ronaldo Al Nassr jerseys on 6-year-olds and 7-year-olds.
Yeah.
I definitely read a briefing. No, I'm not sure whether it was from the newspaper or it was in the Telegraph or the Times, explaining what TNT was going to be since the BT trade over.
Oh yeah.
And there was definitely, I think they're moving away. The general consensus was, I think they're moving away from things like even BT Score or whatever. That's gone.
Yeah.
And towards more live sport. There's a constant stream of live sport. And there was, again, I don't know whether it was who involved was saying it, but it was definitely raised there that it could before long have some sort of television thing from whatever it's called in Saudi Arabia, the league. It's
like, but they've like 4 privatised teams essentially, don't they? It's like the PIF bought out or propped up 4 teams, and then you have others like Al Ettifaq. The fact that I now know 5 Saudi Arabian teams says it all. But Al Ettifaq, Stephen Gerrard's one, aren't one of those, but still obviously have the deep pockets to go and buy.
Marco Silva's rumoured to be going to Al Ahly.
The Fulham manager?
Yeah.
Well, he'll probably want out of there when Mitrovic, up sticks as well, seeing as he's saying he never wants to play for the club after they priced him at 50 million quid.
Reports today that they're going to give him 40 million a year.
It's just mad.
Al Ahly.
Al Ahly. We should mention as well,
heard of them before today.
Before we shoot off, the final referee for the All-Ireland Senior Football Final is appointed.
David Goff is to referee his second All-Ireland Senior Football Final. He'll be in charge next Sunday when Dublin take on holders Kerry. The Meath man, who is one of the top officials in the game, previously refereed the drawn final between these two in 2019. People might remember as well, there was some controversy before the game in relation to that because he is from Meath. The game saw him send off Dublin's Johnny Cooper for persistent fouling in the first half. Joe Brawley not impressed with that at half-time.
Well, as we've all seen, there's one decent performer in Croke Park this year, and that is Meath, based on last week's win in the Tailteann Cup. Anne-Marie, thank you so much for the Newsround this evening. Arturo as well. Ciara Cruz is a very impressive speaker. She comes across as an intelligent footballer, says Fountainstown Forlan. Thank you for that, and thank you for all your comments as well. It is Cash Machine time.
Your chance to win big.
News Talk's Summer Cash Machine.
Since the Cash Machine started, we've given away an incredible 7.2